In the northernmost reaches of the world, the ice is quickly melting, opening new shipping routes, fishing opportunities, and oil fields. This is setting off a race among nations eager to tap into the Arctic's potential. At the heart of it all, there's one body, the Arctic Council. Consisting of 8 countries, the Arctic Council is an intergovernmental forum whose goal is to promote cooperation between the 8 member states for various issues impacting the far north. Formed in 1996, it's a relatively new organization, but one that's faced some issues in recent years, namely the increased tensions between Russia and the other 7 nations, dubbed the Arctic 7. As the Arctic Council continues to adapt, many factors remain uncertain. Can the Council survive these challenges, or will the new messy geopolitical situation prove too much for it to handle? The Arctic Council has its origins in the Arctic Environmental Protection Strategy, or AEPS. Proposed by Finland in 1989 and adopted in 1991, the AEPS was an agreement among the 8 Arctic states to protect the Arctic environment, with a follow-up meeting in 1993 in Nuuk significantly expanding the scope and size of it. In 1996, they met in Ottawa to issue the Ottawa Declaration, which formally established the Arctic Council, with the core tenets of the AEPS being adopted as part of the Council's platform. The 8 nations part of it are the US, Canada, Denmark through their control of Greenland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia, the only countries with territory in the Arctic. Aside from these 8 countries, there are 6 Arctic indigenous communities with permanent participant status, and they are the Aleut International Association, the Arctic Athabascan Council, the Gwich'in Council International, the Inuit Circumpolar Council, the Russian Association of Indigenous People of the North, and the Sami Council. Aside from the 8 member states and 6 permanent participants, there are 13 observer states who have no voting rights and several observer organizations. The main body in the Council is the Secretariat, which handles all organizational and administrative aspects, and its operation is managed by the country which is the current chair. The chairmanship of the Council rotates every 2 years. As of 2024, it's held by Norway, and their term will expire in 2025. Being the chair is more than just office work, though. Meetings of the Council are always held in the country of the chair, though the Secretariat has its headquarters in Tromsø, Norway. Every 6 months, although it does sometimes vary, officials from each of the 8 countries, 6 permanent participants, and observer states meet somewhere in the chair's country for a senior Arctic officials meeting. At the end of the chair's 2-year term, a ministerial level meeting is held, and a declaration summarizing the Council's work over the past 2 years and its immediate goals is issued. Some past declarations include the Barrow Declaration, Barrow has since been renamed Utqiagvik, in 2000, the Salikur Declaration of 2006, and the Rovaniemi Declaration of 2019. Another important body which is in attendance for all these meetings is the Indigenous Peoples Secretariat. This body essentially acts as a secretary for each of the 6 permanent participants, assisting them in presenting their causes before the Council and spreading information amongst them. Apart from all this, there are 6 working groups of the Arctic Council, and several programs and action plans. If you look at the list, you might notice that none of them deal with security or military issues at all. This is deliberate. There's a footnote in the Ottawa Declaration of 1996 which states, quote, "The Arctic Council should not deal with matters related to military security." Now, before we go into the geopolitical aspect, let's go over the laws of the seas and how it affects resource extraction. The document establishing all these laws is the United Nations Convention on the Laws of the Seas, or UNCLOS for short. It went into force 30 years ago in 1994. Here's a quick rundown. This is a baseline. It's the low water mark on a coastline or where the coast is at low tide. Any waters on the inside of the baseline are internal waters, and the country has full control over everything that goes on in those waters. 12 nautical miles, 14 miles or 22 kilometers out from the baseline, you get territorial waters. These are similar to internal waters, but foreign vessels can pass through. This is called the right of innocent passage. Going another 12 miles out, you reach the edge of the contiguous zone. Here, the state can only exercise control to, quote, prevent infringement of its customs, fiscal, immigration, or sanitary laws and regulations. Then, there's the Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ. These are all waters 200 miles out from the baseline. Here, the coastal nation has control over all economic resources, fishing, mining, oil drilling, etc. In case the continental shelf of the nation extends out further than the EEZ's limits, or there's a, quote, extended continental shelf, the definition of which is a bit contrived, the coastal nation has full rights to the shelf and everything on or under it, like oil, but everything above is fair game for anyone to come and take it, like fish. Now, let's look at how that causes tensions among the member states. This map shows the claims to the Arctic water column. Pretty standard EEZ stuff, and apart from a rather surprising dispute between the US and Canada and the Beaufort Sea, everything's alright. But remember the whole extended continental shelf thing which brings even more oil rights into the mix? This is a map of the claims to the Arctic seabed, and as the Arctic ice continues to melt, that means access to its oil fields. The problem with these claims is that they're unverified. Mapping the extended continental shelf is often difficult and extremely resource-consuming. Another point of contention is the Northwest Passage, a route through Canada's Queen Elizabeth Islands, which, for the MS Nordic Orion, shortened the travel distance from Pori, Finland to Vancouver, Canada by 1,000 nautical miles. That's not all. Using the Northwest Passage also allowed it to load 15,000 more tons of cargo than it would have been able to carry if it went through the Panama Canal, although this was before the Panama Canal's 2016 expansion. Although the Orion only completed the passage due to the presence of icebreakers from the Canadian Coast Guard, the Northwest Passage has the potential to become a major shipping route in a future with no sea ice. Canada, however, claims the passage as internal waters, and that would give them the right to control who passes through it. The US and some former European community states, meanwhile, claim that the passage qualifies as a strait, allowing foreign vessels to pass through. There are also several other issues, such as the militarization of the Arctic and tensions between the West and the East. For example, China claims to be a near-Arctic state, and has stated its interest in extracting resources from the Arctic seabed. What's a near-Arctic state? The Chinese government defines the term as, quote, one of the continental states that are closest to the Arctic Circle, although several other countries closer to the Arctic Circle haven't used this term. It's controversial, and other Arctic states don't recognize this claim. These issues haven't truly tested the strength of the Arctic Council, however. The issue that's been the most trying is the tension between Russia and the other 7 member states of the Arctic, informally called the Arctic 7. In February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, and the next month, in March, the Arctic 7 suspended all activities involving Russia because, at the time, Russia was the chair. Some organs, like the Indigenous Peoples Secretariat, which also doesn't involve Russia directly, continued to operate, but all meetings were suspended. Soon after, some functions were resumed, although Russia was excluded from them. Climate and environmental projects, which rely on data collection across borders, and Russia accounts for 45% of the geographical Arctic, ceased to operate, and it wasn't until May 2023 until the chairmanship passed to Norway. Still though, the Arctic 7 have refused to work with Russia following its invasion of Ukraine, and many question the, quote, relevance of a circumpolar forum that ignores half of the high north. There are also questions over the effectiveness of the Arctic Council. All of its declarations are non-binding. So, what does the future of the Arctic Council look like? Will it still hold its relevance with the new split between Russia and the Arctic 7? How will the race for resources affect the tensions between member states? And will the militarization of the Arctic lead to a pivot for the Arctic Council in terms of policy? For those questions, only time will tell. So that's it for the Arctic Council, the messy geopolitics of the far north. If you liked the video, then be sure to subscribe, like, and share. Thank you for watching Explained.